Hey, what's going on everybody? Commander Crane here, and we are back with another Pioneer video, and today we're going to be talking about the best Pioneer cards that were printed in 2024. That includes cards from all of the standard legal sets, those being, of course, Murders at Karlov Manor, Outlaws of Thunder Junction, Blue Murrow, Duskmourn, as well as Magic Foundations. So a few things we have to talk about before we actually hop into the list, which there's 15 cards that I want to talk about today. I guess kind of 16 in a way, but anyways, so not all these cards are obviously the same. Some of them are kind of in a few different categories. We have the cards that are like proven absolute winners. We have cards that maybe made decks that were like tier 2 a little bit stronger. We have some really, really good sideboard cards that are good in a number of different shells. We also have a card, for instance, that is technically still legal in the format, but is kind of not legal at the same time, which will make sense at the end of the video. And I'm sure some people kind of know what that card is going to be, but regardless, there were a ton of spicy cards that entered the format this year in 2024, and man, they were all really, really good, all really, really fun cards, I would say, for the most part. And let's go and hop into the list here. So the honorable mention, and the reason I'm putting these here is because I always hate putting lands in the actual list themselves, just because it always feels like, oh, of course, you know, the dual lands are going to be good. So I wanted to put them at the honorable mentions. So the new dual land cycles that we got this time around, we obviously had the Surveil lands with at least Meticulous Archive, which I would say is the most played one in the format, as well as, I don't know what the actual name is for these ones, but it's basically like a better check land. It was the Verge cycle, I guess that's what we'll call them. Overall, both of these cycles are really, really good. I'm happy that they printed these, and overall, they're pretty solid in Pioneer, and that's why I wanted to put them in the honorable mentions, but I always feel like, again, it's a wasted slot if you just put a dual land cycle there, because, you know, of course, we're going to get dual land cycles like every other Magic set that comes out. So, but anyways, let's go and hop into the list, and obviously, I'm going to be biased. This is not, you know, I'm not pulling up this data of the most played cards or anything. This is just my opinion. So speaking of my opinion and cards that I really like and cards I think that have potential, number 15 is Wiltleaf Leech. I mean, again, this card is so strong in the right shell, which is Wiltleaf aggro, basically playing a bunch of green and white creatures. So your creatures are getting +2/+2. It has the nice discard effect if our opponent is playing like Liliana the Veil or cards of that nature. Overall, Wiltleaf Leech definitely falls into the category of underexplored cards in the format, but as someone who has played this card a lot in the format, you know, like the little bit of time that Wiltleaf Leech has been legal, the card is incredibly strong, and you definitely should give that card a try if you have not already. But Wiltleaf Leech is number 15 on the list because I do think it's underexplored. Another card that in a way is underexplored, but another card that people just think is super strong is number 14, and that card's Kido, Bane of Nightmares. So I put in here featured in Dimir Ninjas. It's not just featured in Dimir Ninjas, it is Dimir Ninjas. The deck exists because of Kido, Bane of Nightmares. I mean, without this card, the deck is just, it's not good. It's just a random Dimir tempo deck that's really not that good. Kido is what makes this deck good, and as time goes on, we're going to get more ninjas, or we're going to get more rogues that make this deck better overall. So Kido is a card to keep an eye on. I think this card is going to just get better and better and better as time goes on. So again, keep an eye out on it. Pick up your copies if you're thinking about playing this card, because it's just going to get better as time goes on. And I wouldn't be surprised if it finds itself at the top of a metagame at some point, because it's already won a couple of good Pioneer, you know, events that have already occurred. So I think the deck's just going to get better as time goes on. All right, number 13, I have Deduce, which again, a lot of people are just like, oh yeah, it's just a random common, you know, 2-mana, draw a card and investigate. But this card sees a lot of play in a number of different decks, primarily blue-white control, blue-black control, and Is It Creativity? Creativity really likes it just because they're able to, you know, use the artifact to actually be able to activate the creativity to start putting in, you know, like World Spine-Worm Xenagos, or if they're cheating in the Vault-Born Tyrant, whatever style they really like to play. Overall, it's just really, really good. So Deduce, you know, I guess technically a kind of a better Think Twice, but overall still a really, really good card in the metagame, and a sneaky card that a lot of people really don't think about, just because, again, it's just a random common from one set. But Deduce is still very, very strong, and that's why I've got it at number 13 on the list. Number 12, speaking of sneaky cards, Pick Your Poison. Again, another really good common from Murders at Karlov Manor. It's featured in green sideboards, and that's because almost every green deck plays it. It's just so efficient. Being able to make an opponent sacrifice an artifact, enchantment, or a creature with flying is super strong. It was pretty much half the reason that green decks even had somewhat of a chance to compete in the Vin Ripper Sorin metagame, just because you could make them get rid of their Vin Ripper for only 1 mana. And half the time, Pick Your Poison is kind of like a 1 1-mana disenchant, just because if they only have like a 1 leyline binding in play, make them sacrifice an enchantment, but they only have 1 copy and that kind of thing. So pick your poison, definitely very, very strong. Huge fan of this card. I still play in a number of my sideboards even today, obviously, because the card is really strong, and that's why it's number 12 on the list. All right, number 11, I have Zombify. And again, kind of similar to Kido, I put in there featured in Reanimator. This card is Reanimator. Obviously, there's good cards like Fable the Mirror Breaker that kind of help fill the graveyard, but Zombify, at the end of the day, is what's bringing it back, along with Right of Them Off. But Zombify is just better in the sense that it doesn't get the finality counter, or there's no like weird exile clause with it. It's just you reanimate it, and then if they happen to kill it again, you just bring it back with your other copies of Zombify that you have. So, you know, Reanimator did not exist before Zombify. Zombify is the reason why Reanimator actually exists in Pioneer. And again, similar to Kido, I think it's just going to get better and better and better as time goes on. We're either going to get maybe slightly better versions of Zombify, or other, you know, like functionally different, functionally the same versions, that so we have multiple copies of Zombify, or even just better Reanimator targets, which, spoiler alert, we're going to be talking about a good reanimation target here in just a moment. But overall, Zombify number 11 on the list, just because it has been very, very strong so far in Pioneer. All right, heading into the top 10, number 10, I have even Interruptor, a card that has been so good since it came out in Outlaws of Thunder Junction. When it enters the battlefield, exile target spell, and it becomes plotted, and then spells your opponents cast from graveyards or from exile cost 2 more to cast. The card, it's just a counter spell, basically. It's kind of like a, forgetting the name of it all of a sudden, but it's the spirit, the 2/3 spirit with flash, not rattle change, oh my goodness, spell queller, there we go. I was like, how can I not remember that card? But it's basically just a spell queller in a way, and the card's super strong. It's really good in green-white taxes and green-white cocoa, and it did managed to top 8 the regional championship in America, just because the card's really strong. With Collected Company, being able to potentially have a counter spell or something like that is really strong. And then if you combine it with elements like Thalia and Anointed Peacekeeper and have this really nice taxing effect going on, it's very strong, and also works really well with Eldrazi Displacer. So even Interrupter is number 10 on the list. Number 9, I have Ygra, Eater of All, and this card pretty much single-handedly made sack decks a little bit better. You know, like before Vampires, the deck was really good. It was definitely one of the better decks in the metagame. Then it kind of fell off a little bit. Then they printed Ygra, and the deck just got so much better in the sense that not only can you just have this really large monstrosity of a creature, but you can also just do an infinite combo with Cauldron Familiar. So overall, huge fan of Ygra. It made the deck a lot better. I have not been seeing as much sacrifice though recently, which is why it's a little bit lower on the list. You know, maybe earlier in the year it would have been a little bit higher, but overall, Ygra is definitely a welcome addition for the sacrifice players, because this card is absolutely busted. Okay, number 8, I have 3 steps ahead. Simply put, this is just a really good counterspell that was printed this year. Spoiler alert, I do think there was one that was also printed that's slightly better, but 3 steps ahead. It's kind of like a cryptic command in a way. You know, if you pay the 3, you counter a spell. You do have to pay 5, and then it's draw 2, then discard, but it's just a really good card. Very, very flexible. Most of the time, you're just going to be countering a spell with this, but the fact that, you know, it's a charm, essentially, that you have some extra modes to it is definitely really, really good. And pretty much, if you're a blue control deck, you're going to want to play 3 steps ahead in your deck, and there's no if, ands, or buts about it. So 3 steps ahead is number 8 on the list. Number 7, I have Vel'Gavoth, Terror Eater. Speaking of Reanimator cards, this card is super good. When I first saw it, I knew it was like, oh yeah, you know, we're going to be cheating this into play along with, not Shieldred, Atraxa easily, and that's exactly what's happening. It's really good in Rakdos Transmog, Creativity, as well as Reanimator. Basically, ways to just cheat it into play, because then you have a 9/9 flying lifelink with a really, really good ward ability on that, and then a nice ability there that it has. Like, you may play cards exiled with Vel'Gavoth. If you cast a spell this way, pay life equal to its mana value, and then if a card you didn't control would be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. So Vel'Gavoth, super strong card, 9/9 flying life-linking demon. Thank God I have Pick Your Poisons in my sideboard, otherwise I'd be losing to this card way more than I already am. So Vel'Gavoth, number 7 on the list. And speaking of demon cards, number 6, I have Unholy Annex and Ritual Chamber. This card is super strong. Who would have guessed that a Phyrexian Arena with some upside would be really, really good? I don't know. Not me. I definitely didn't know. But anyways, it's really good in demons. That's why we have Golgari demons, Rakdos Demons and Dimir Demons. If they make any other demon decks, you know that Unholy Annex and Ritual Chamber is going to be featured in that deck, just because it's really good. You know, you play it on turn 3, you can already start drawing some extra cards. Turn 5, if you want to, you can go ahead and unlock the door and make another demon, but you can just also play other demons like Archfiend of the Dross, which helps you just have the demon in play already. So overall, this is definitely a really, really good card. Huge fan of the rooms in general, and this one is definitely the best of the bunch, and that's why I've got it at number 6. All right, number 5, we're entering our top 5 cards here, which these cards pretty unanimously are definitely very, very strong in the format. Number 5, I have Mage Bane Lizard. It's such a good sideboard card, and it's also a main boardable card in the right metagame. 1/4 for 2, whenever a player casts a non-creature spell, Mage Bane Lizard deals damage to that player equal to the number of non-creature spells they've cast this turn. So it is symmetrical, but it doesn't even matter. So in short, the card it's like a snowball. So obviously, okay, they're going to opt. All right, you take 1. Okay, then I'm going to consider. Okay, now you'll take 2 damage. Okay, and then I'm going to Treasure Cruise. Okay, you've taken 3, so that's 6 damage for 2 mana with Mage Bane Lizard. It's featured in pretty much every red mid-range or aggro sideboard. I know I play in Dinosaurs. He's playing like mono red aggro burn decks just because of how good it is against Lotus Field, as well as decks like Is It Phoenix. You can also even bring it in against Control, you know, just kind of slowly pick them off if they're drawing some extra cards, or, you know, heck, even if they end up, you know, using a Fatal Push or a Go for the Throat on this, at least they take a little bit of damage from that. So overall, Mage Bane Lizard, again, another sneaky sideboard card or common, uncommon card, similar to Pick Your Poison and Deduce. The card is definitely very, very strong. All right, number 4, I have No More Lies. Speaking of really good uncommons, I guess this is just the year of really good commons and uncommons in Standard, but No More Lies is fantastic. It's a blue-white mana leak, which everyone knew that this card was going to be good. It really just sees play in blue-white control and occasionally 5-color Niv, but the decks that play it, specifically blue-white control, it's one of the best cards in the deck. Before 2024, I always talked about how blue-white control had really, really weak counterspells. So really, blue-white control was just about answering your opponent's threats through removal. The only counterspell that the deck really ever played was Sinister Sabotage. But now, because of No More Lies and 3 Steps Ahead, blue-white control has kind of pivoted back to what blue-white control was always about, and that is countering spells and having removal, not just removal and just a few counter spells for here and there. But anyways, No More Lies, super duper strong card. I did include it, but it also does see some play in Blue-White Spirits, but they kind of have like their own counter spells and such like that, which actually we're going to be talking about a Spirit card next that does see play in that deck. But anyways, number 4 is No More Lies, and that's because the card is definitely very, very strong. All right, number 3, I have Sheltered by Ghosts. This card is just absolutely incredible. I would say probably the best card from Duskmourn in general in terms of, you know, playability in Pioneer. It sees playing Spirits, Humans, Green-White Hexproof. You can also just throw on there any white aggro deck basically is going to want this card. When it enters, exile a non-land permanent opponent controls until Sheltered by Ghosts leaves the battlefield, and then enchanted creature gets +1/+0 and has lifelink and ward 2. The card's just super good. You can also put on like an Optimistic Scavenger, giving it a counter, exiling their thing, and then it's just a 3/2 with lifelink and ward 2. Gets even worse. I mean, again, decks like Spirits and Humans take advantage of it the most. Green-White Hexproof, a bunch of your creatures have Hexproof or basically have Hexproof, so it's just really hard to remove the creature to get rid of the Sheltered by Ghosts. So overall, Sheltered by Ghosts, incredibly strong card. There's a reason why it's a few dollar uncommon, and that's because so many different decks want it, not even just in Pioneer. So Sheltered by Ghosts is number 3 on the list. All right, we're down to the last 2 cards here, which I think both these cards are going to be pretty self-explanatory. So number 2, I have Slick Shot Show Off. This card is just absolutely bonkers. I mean, imagine a Kiln Fiend, but like basically better. Sure, it doesn't get as much of a buff from non-creatures, which actually I think Kiln Fiend's only instant in sorceries, so the non-creature's better anyways. This card's just super good. If you're playing a fast red aggro deck, you're going to want this. Obviously, he's playing a Tarka red, Rakdos Fling, Wizard aggro, Izzet Prowess, and Burn, and there's probably more decks that I'm forgetting. That's just because of how strong the card is. You can plot it so your opponent has a hard time, you know, using sorcery speed removal to be able to take this thing out. And then whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Slick Shot Show Off gets +2/+0 until end of turn. I mean, there's so many times where I've seen people just plot this on 2, plot it on 3, untap, cast both of them, attack, throw a couple of, you know, Wizard's Lightning or pump spells or something, and the game's just over. I mean, Slick Shot Show Off is absolutely incredible. One of the best cards printed. Honestly, You could make an argument that it is the best card printed, and that's because of the #1 card, which we're going to talk about in just a second here. But Slickshot Show Off, what an incredible card, and that's why it's #2 on the list. So this is going to be the most controversial card probably on the list here, and that card is Vin Ripper. I put it as the best card, and we're going to talk about why I did. And the reason why is because Vin Ripper was so good, it made Soren get banned. So Soren, obviously, in the past, you know, there were other vampires you could put into play, you know, with its minus ability. Were any of them as good as Vin Ripper? No, because they were either, like, had a really weird cost to it, or it was kind of janky. You know, you realistically wouldn't be able to actually cast the vampire if you didn't have Soren. So you kind of take everything into account there, and they made Vin Ripper, and the card just super duper strong. Obviously, you know, it won the Pro Tour, it won a whole bunch of other fantastic events, and that's why it had to be, well, not Vin Ripper had to be banned, but Soren had to be banned. It hasn't really seen play since Soren's been banned, but it's not that the card is bad. It can still definitely see play. Don't count this card out. It's gonna come back into Pioneer. I know it absolutely will. You know, whether or not they start printing some more Vampire Matters cards, or just there's another black deck that decides, you know what, I'm just gonna start playing Vin Ripper because the card is really good still. I don't know. We'll see what happens, but again, a little bit of controversy with Vin Ripper, maybe Slickshot Show Off, especially since Slickshot is still seeing play in Pioneer, whereas Vin Ripper hasn't seen any since Soren was banned. But it doesn't matter. It's my list, and that's why I'm putting Vin Ripper at the best card that was printed into Pioneer in 2024. So that takes us to the end of the video here. Thanks so much for watching. If there's a specific card that you think I definitely should have put in this video, let me know in the comment section below. I know there was a lot of cards that I wanted to go over, but I didn't want to have just like 30 cards on the list, so I kind of had to trim some good cards. But if there's a card that definitely should have been on the list, let me know in the comment section below. Don't forget to subscribe. We are on our way to 1,000 subscribers, and you won't want to miss the giveaway that happens once we get there. We are getting very, very close, so go ahead and hit that subscribe button to make sure that you don't miss it. Huge shout out to our channel members, Ralph, Matt, Arcadius, Ray, Gary, Sarwanoki, and Night Red 3. If you're interested in being a channel member, it's only $1 a month, and you get access to the exclusive Commander Crane Discord, as well as other features here on the channel. So, I'm Commander Crane. Thanks for watching this video, and I hope to catch you in the next one.